Oh, okay. So, hey, Becca, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. It's 85 degrees outside.
That's too many
In
degrees.
October.
It's October.
Oh, there you go, Mary Graham. There's the red and roses tattoo. I'm not gonna move because I'll.
Wahoo.
Wow.
Yes.
I'm like, let me show it to you. I'm like, no, the moving in the mirror is just not gonna work. So I'm just gonna stop moving.
Historical fiction.
Yes. Well, listeners of the pod who've heard the previous episodes Becca has been on might be saying to themselves, gosh, you put these people in a room and they start talking about historical labor rights related disasters.
Yeah,
which is good. That's what you should expect from us, and you'll get it again.
Yeah.
And so Becca and I were texting earlier about such things. And I was mentioning I can't believe I don't have a bread and roses tattoo yet. I have 3, and I'm the person who decides which tattoos I have. So I don't know. I'm slacking. I'm behind.
Which is it's a song from the labor rights movement.
Yes.
For those who don't know.
Yeah, everyone go watch the 2014 film Pride to be introduced.
Excellent film.
To that song and to Cry Your Eyes Out.
Oh, yeah. I've never seen that movie.
Lesbians and gays support the minors.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to see it.
Yes, you should see it. We
So
have it.
good.
We have it here at your local library.
Speaking of libraries, it's a library podcast. It's a little too quiet. It's brought to you by the Friends of the Ferndale Library. I'm Jeff. You heard from Mary Grahame.
Hello.
And that's Becca over there at Royal Oak. Becca.
Hello.
And we're talking about, well, this jumping off point is historical fiction. Bullet point. Bullet point mid to late 90s and beyond. Bullet point middle grade fiction.
Bullet point. What were they putting in the water in the late 90s to early 2000s that made the historical fiction so good? And can we get that water additive back?
I do want you to get to anything you want to get to, but I feel like we're going to talk about the American Girl series.
Oh yeah.
And can you tell folks at home a little bit about what that is?
Well, the American Girl series was initially published by the Pleasant Company, which was later bought out by Mattel on the toy side. And I can't remember if it was, I don't remember the publisher. I don't remember who publishes them now. But they started as a series of books in the late 90s. And they're still around. They continue. New characters get added all the time. And it's a collection of series. So each book series has 6 books. They're somewhat formulaic in terms of, there's always a book about school, always a book about birthday or something like that. Mm-hmm. And they're from different eras in American history. And something I've always loved about American Girl was by the time I was old enough for them, they were taking an appropriately broad view of what American history is. So my favorite book series when I was little was from before First Contact in the Nez Perce Nation, which is up in the Pacific Northwest. And my best friend's favorite series was set in New Mexico before it was on this side of the border, before the border moved. And so that was something that we liked. My parents really encouraged me to read them. And they were quite formative for me and for a lot of other people. And Becca, I'm sure you have stories.
I was so much more basic than you were, but I am not like, because you work in libraries, people can guess which American Girl you were into.
Oh yes, so sorry. Mine was
not the one you would have guessed for me.
Yeah.
I was a Felicity girl, full blown.
I love Felicity,
but I wasn't a horse girl, and I wasn't very brave. And Felicity is very like brave and like challenges authority, and that's just not who I was. Like realistically, I should have been a Samantha or Molly girl, but like Felicity had me.
No, that's completely. So I had Kaya. I realized I didn't drop any names. I had Kaya, which is short for Kaya Donmai, and the I didn't learn this until later, but Kaya's whole series of books were made in consultation with Nez Perce Nation. And they did a lot of they did a lot of research and also like collaboration. And then my best friend had Josefina growing up. I loved Felicity, though, because I was an American Revolution girl. I wasn't a horse girl either.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah, but I wasn't a horse girl either, but I was a total American Revolution girly. And like these books have, I mean, if you didn't grow up with them or if you're not familiar with these, hop over to your local library and go look them up. I can guarantee you your library's going to have at least some. They were full color illustrations, full page illustrations, and I distinctly remember the first book series, the series of 6 that I finished was Addie. So Addie is a girl who is born on a plantation, enslaved, and she and her mother self-emancipate in the first book. And her family has been sold. Her father and brother and sister have been sold away to different plantations. And so the rest of the series is about she and her mother make it to Philadelphia, to the free Black community there. And the rest of the series is her finding the rest of her family and them all coming to Philadelphia. So I tore through those books because I had to find out what happened and if everybody was going to come home, but also formative memory. There's a scene very early in the first book, before she and her mother run away, where Addie is picking the grubs off of cotton plants and the overseer makes her eat every grub that she misses that he finds after her. And it's horrific. And I am pretty sure that that's a large part of the reason I never had but it was so long ago and it wasn't that bad attitude about slavery. Because I was like, I bet that totally actually happened. And it's awful and gross.
And you're somewhere between 4th and 6th grade here? 7?
Second grade, easy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
For me, yeah.
Wow.
And there's a frustration for me with the American Girl series and the way they've sort of shifted things is that I am still a big proponent of the way they used to publish them, where they were the 6 individual books that all had a theme, as opposed to the way they publish them now, which kind of shoves them together. Because I think they are for a younger age bracket, and the thicker they make them, the less the older kids want to pull it.
Yeah, good point. Because I was thinking, is this 4th and beyond? Yeah,
no, this is for me. For me, it was. I probably read my first one in first grade, but as soon as I started reading pretty high. But I read the majority of them in 2nd and 3rd grade. They're geared, all the girls in those books are 9. So they're geared at 9-year-olds, maybe a year, because kids often like to read slightly up in terms of about kids slightly older than them. And so that was 2nd and 3rd grade were the peak of my years.
Responsible about its research.
Always have been.
Yeah,
they actually did something that has very strong opinions. I don't know if you've looked into this, Mary Graham, but their most recent American Girl is from it's the Girl of the Year. So the Girl of the Year is a separate thing done by American Girl that every year there's one individual girl that is released that gets a series of books and all of the stuff that comes with American Girl, the doll and the pets and
and they're usually modern
memorabilia and stuff. But this time the Girl of the Year is the great granddaughter of Samantha Parkington.
Really?
And she is also Latina.
Amazing.
And so what they've done is make this Latina character that is the great granddaughter of the spoiled little rich girl from 1902.
Who has a person 1902? Who has 1904? But who has a personal awakening? When I become a bit of a Samantha defender because she does.
Oh, absolutely. I just like when it all comes down to it, the wealthiest of the American girls.
That's very true. So Samantha is from like the East Coast in 1904, and her parents are dead. So she lives with Grandmère, with her Grand Mary, her wealthy grandmother. But she has a whole like labor rights, anti-child labor, like factory justice personal awakening. It's fantastic.
So
she finds out that other children her age have to work as maids and in factories to survive, and she gets real mad about it.
Yeah, she's like, oh, absolutely not.
Okay, so.
And like the stakes in these too, Kirsten, who's a Swedish immigrant who moves up to Minnesota, her best friend dies of cholera in like book 4 or something. I
did something excusable but common but lazy. So I asked Google AI.
No.
Listen. Wait, this is for fun.
No.
Go with me on this.
We might as well have poured a bottle of water out into the dirt.
I mean, but he's already done it. Let him go.
Go with me. I was curious to find out which of the American Girl books has been the most challenged to date, and which one has caused the most fracas. And they said Meet Samantha was the one that ruffled feathers.
Do we have a source for that beyond Google AI?
I'll go check right now. I'll be right back. You guys can keep talking about Samantha.
Thank you. So in addition to, if we're here to talk about kind of historical fiction and our origin stories about historical fiction, for me, it was these like series books of the late 90s and early 2000s. American Girl, Dear America, which we've mentioned before, those were Scholastic. The Royal Diaries was actually really my jam, which was also Scholastic. So those were fictional diaries of actual people, and was a big, I don't know, a way that I learned a lot about. The first book I ever wrote about Cleopatra, was one of those books. For a while, there was a brief flash in the pan moment where the same people who published American Girl published a series of books for slightly older girls called Girls in Many Lands. Becca, which was for 12-year-olds. I have all of them because they went out of print very quickly, and I was like, I'm guarding these with my life. And they're still great. When I was stuck at home during lockdown in 2020, I pulled out Isabel, who's from Tudor England, and the plague is involved in that book. And I was like,
my favorite was Cecile, because there's this like really tragic scene in Cecile where she's like basically the royal version of a babysitter for the princes, and they come down with something, and they basically decide that like they've got to sacrifice the royal child that has, it's not the plague, but one of those diseases. They're like, we're gonna have to just take him out of here because otherwise the whole thing's gonna get it. And like, they don't kill him or anything, but I remember him being dragged away from the family.
Well, they do.
Like, this is a lot.
And I think part of it is that they're like going to bleed him, and Cecile is like, this is not going to help.
She like
shuts herself
any more bleeding
in a closet with the younger baby, who in the narrative of the story eventually becomes Louis XV. And I loved all of those. Like, there's one set in Ethiopia that was the only Saba, which was the only book I read set, I think, in a historical African setting, which is a huge like lacuna in historical fiction publishing for children. Oh my God, you can do so much interesting stuff with historic Africa that is not Egypt. Because there is a lot out there for Egypt. Yeah, I'm like looking at the other. I made a whole like list while I was on desk of all the formative stuff. Catherine Called Birdie was probably the most important like single like non-series book for me. Reread that one recently, which is about a girl.
They made a movie of it like 2 years ago, and I was like,
they did, but I'm skeptical because Lena Dunham's involved.
That is exactly what I said. But it was also just funny to me because I was like, is this like a Lena Dunham passion project? Because culturally, most of us, I think, moved on.
Yeah,
like,
no, I think it was.
From you, me, and like the girls like us, I think most of us culturally had moved on from that book by then.
I'll never move on from that book. Catherine Called Birdie is set in the 13th century. Again, a century that more things should be set in, and is about a young, maybe just early teens, girl in the Middle Ages whose father is broke and needs to get her married off for monetary reasons. And so she comes up with a variety of schemes to scare suitors away. But it is her diary, and I love her so much. When people are like, oh, we need more feral girls in fiction and in the world. Catherine Birdie was the OG feral girl.
So Pleasant something was the company.
The Pleasant Company.
Pleasant Company.
Mm-hmm.
They
founded by Pleasant Rowland.
Pleasant Rowland. Apparently, their goal was to provide girls with a window to the past and a mirror to reflect their stories and heritage.
And boy, oh boy, did it work.
A fun thing I found about the American Girl series as it goes on is you can tell that the girls that were reading the original books are growing up and still being hardcore American Girl fans because they did Harlem Renaissance,
Yes.
Claudie, and it was written by bestselling author Britt Bennett. But Britt Bennett is of the age that I have a feeling it was an Addie girl grown up saying, okay, we're going to make another one and I'm going to do it right.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yep. And there's a girl from Detroit who's Melody. Yep. And yeah, no, it's and the thing about American Girl that like I look like my dolls are I think in storage, at my parents' house or something. And as I was packing them up before I like moved to go to graduate school, I cried packing those things up because those books are so much about how to be a good friend, how to be a responsible person. Like they and about like
sacrifice for others,
being sacrifice for others, being part of a community, not being
empathy.
Self-centered. Yeah, a lot of the books, have kind of the biggest, and I remember this with the Felicity books and with a couple of the others, the biggest problem comes when you're only thinking about yourself, or you're only, you're acting maybe not maliciously, but without stopping to consider other people. And like, those are where some of the biggest lessons come in.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm also hearing that a lot of these stories expose dark sides.
Oh, yeah.
However, gracefully avoid sowing cynicism. Nurturing something else,
Yeah, no, I'd say so.
Yeah, so responsibly researched. Yeah.
I would say that about both the American Girl series and the Dear America books.
Yes.
I think the Dear America books did such hard things sometimes that, like, not to return to the theme of Banned Books Week because we're in it. But I think one of the things that gets banned a lot of times is when adults forget that kids can handle hard things. And you can see the two of us that, like, how formative learning about the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire was for us. I think reading historical fiction, reading about things, even if they're like fictional people, they're things that happen to real people.
Exactly.
And sort of understanding our place in the world and how things go wrong, I think is a thing that we should be able to trust kids with.
And also, all of these books have functionally end notes or author's notes or actual, things about the actual history beyond them. But with the American Girl books, they often were whole separate books. I still have a separate book called Welcome to Kaya's World that is all, it's almost like an eyewitness, like the DK eyewitness books that have a lot of pictures and a lot of captions and things like that. All the Dear America books had historical notes in the back to tell you about, okay, so the girl this book is about is fictional, but this is actually true. This part is actually real. And it's interesting. I was just watching the HBO series Chernobyl with my partner a couple of weeks ago, and
a light, just warm, happy sit.
It's what we needed right now, Jeff.
Yeah.
But there's a companion podcast with the head writer, hosted by Peter Sagal of NPR Wait, Don't Tell Me fame, that is entirely about, it's basically the historical end note for every episode, because so much of the series is about truth. And so it was very important to the head writer, whose name I'm forgetting, that it is easy for viewers to find what he changed, what he had to adapt for dramatic purposes, and what was all real. And most of this podcast is Peter Sagal going, really? And the head writer going, yeah, no, that part was true.
Becca, so there is some Venn diagram here between American Girl and Dear America, because I was setting up for this podcast literally, admittedly mixing them up in my head. So, like, I just have this...
That's because you've never held one in your hand.
I know.
They're unmistakable.
The Dear America books, part of the appeal, I have to say, had nothing to do with the plot. It was that they made the Dear America books look like diaries. They put ribbons in them and they had deckled edges. And so you felt like you were having an experience when you picked one up.
To this day, and I'm somebody who still keeps a journal, to this day, my preferred journal size is approximately the trim size of the Dear America books.
I am going to swerve this back to Banned Books Week.
Please do.
And I did get I did substantiate my Googling, and apparently it's only out there on on Reddit, which can't be trusted.
Thank you.
However,
This has been an object lesson in real time.
yes. However, there are reports that a certain state has been banning American Girl
Is it Florida?
books. It is Florida. But I think it's worth saying, in sort of like a lazy conversation starting TED Talk kind of way, it's kind of almost surprising to me that more of these books haven't been challenged. I would have thought they would have been.
I think just for the Florida thing, American Girl either needs to do Cuban refugees or call up Seminole Nation
Special
and say, hey, do you want to
2026
collaborate?
edition. Yes.
Exactly.
But, not to get on the soapbox, the thing I've kind of noticed about banned books week, any books that are challenged tend to be books that maybe get the young reader thinking about things.
Yeah, and not just about, children can handle difficult things, although they can.
Right.
I was thinking, I might have told this story before. No book has made me cry harder than A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, which I read in high school. And the reason that I cried is because there is a scene in it in which there's a young unwed mother who's walking through the neighborhood, just taking her little baby on a walk. And the older women in the neighborhood look at this girl and think like, look at this harlot. She's out here with her baby and she seems so unbothered and she is just happily going for a walk. And they start throwing rocks at her, and they miss, and one of the rocks hits the baby. And I don't even remember after that if the baby is, because I think that because it's all from the young narrator's particular point of view, I don't think you ever actually find out if the baby's okay. It's just that happens and they immediately like realize what they've been doing and stop throwing rocks. I sobbed about that for the rest of the night. And then I finished the book.
Right.
And like people shouldn't be deprived of that kind of experience. It wasn't bad for me.
Right.
I mean, whether it was good, I think it was, but also I think that's beside the point. It was not bad.
Right.
And I know this is something that we kind of had on the short list of topics to cover is how historical fiction builds this kind of empathy for people with very different experiences, because the past, what's the line? I think it's Faulkner, the past is a foreign country. They do things differently there.
Right. I mean, not to make this like sort of like emotional equation here, but isn't it kind of hard to like, you don't really develop empathy until you hear about the bad stuff?
Yeah.
Like you have to like feel for their experience.
Yeah.
And learn about them. Becca, thoughts, banned book, Dear America, empathy.
There was especially in children's books, I'm ignoring the elephant in the room, and the elephant in the room is that any book with a gay person for any age has been challenged lately. But I think a lot has been said about that lately. I think what gets to me is I cannot attribute this quote. I've tried to reattribute it. I swear I heard it somewhere, but it was something to the point of, they were talking about Night by Elie Wiesel.
Yeah.
Which is not fiction, but it sort of reads like fiction. And I think a lot of us have to read it in school as like a novel, even though it's not fiction. And somebody said to the point, people are banning Night because it's about a 12 or 13-year-old boy. And they don't think the 12 and 13-year-old kids should be able to read it. But at the same time, those events were happening 12 to 13-year-old boy.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think maybe the outside world or the book banners or whoever wants to challenge these materials as age appropriate, a lot of times needs to remember that like some of the things publishers and authors and librarians make sure things are written in an age appropriate way. So they meet the child at the level developmentally that they can handle. But at the same time, when it comes to books that are talking about being groomed, children who are being assaulted at home, domestic violence, things like that, when you are trying to take those away from children, you're ignoring the population of children that is dealing with that at home.
And it doesn't make anyone safer.
Right.
That is
Oh my God.
something.
Say that again.
Yeah,
Oh my
that's something
God.
that frustrates me very, very deeply. I was once on a panel, God love her, with Christine Peel, who works at the Detroit Public Library, and we were at a teach-in, and someone asked about book bans, and she said, "People in Detroit mind their own business." She was like, "We just haven't had a problem with book challenges at the Detroit Public Library because people, and I have found this to be true, people in Detroit mind their own business." Yeah. And this is painting with a broad brush, but also my experience as someone growing up in Detroit, and leading a very happy childhood there, is even those of us who lead very happy childhoods there, everyone knows someone, or everyone knows that bad things happen. And so there was no point of being like, "Oh, we're keeping you away from that book." Like, I often associate that, like, "Oh, books shouldn't be upsetting" mentality with people who haven't had anything to upset them yet, which is pretty, frankly, unrealistic.
Right.
You know, life
or
is...
think they're exempt from it, think that they're above it, think that it couldn't happen to their own children in their own communities. They think that they live outside of it enough that their kids would never have to deal with it. And a lot of those things hit everywhere. And especially something like, you know, I remember when I've had kind of abuse awareness training as part of my work in churches. I've had multiple rounds of Narcan training, opioid awareness type training things. And something that always gets emphasized is like, don't look around and think, "Oh, this doesn't happen here." This kind of stuff happens everywhere. And there's a story that I would be able to source had I my things in front of me. But it was an article that was talking about a young girl and her mother being in a public library, and the girl pulling, I think, one of the Robbie Harris books, which is about like sex education and bodies and stuff like that, off of the shelf, and sort of paging through it. And when she got to a page about like safety and like grooming and things like that, took it over to her mother and pointed to it and said, "I think this is happening to me," because she was she was young. And so it took seeing it, and it turned out it was a family member. And that is... None of this makes anyone safer.
To bring it back to American Girl,
as one always should.
As we should.
Yeah.
I don't think it's too much for reach. I think there's a tie there where you could say the whole thing around this sort of thing does happen to people. This sort of thing does happen.
Child labor, dying of cholera.
Right. I mean,
flash floods. That's a big thing in Josefina's.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the newer ones, Nanea, is a Native Hawaiian living on Hawaii when Pearl Harbor happens.
Yeah. And it just, and I am someone who's finding a lot of comfort right now in reading a lot of history. I mean, that's always been true for me, but like, I read a lot about the influenza pandemic, you know, in the past couple of years, but also just thinking about, you know, it's not a fun time here in these United States of America. And I am looking a lot to past, you know, everything old is the Red Scare again, folks.
No, sure. And we can have, we can throw memes and reels out there where it's likely a millennial who's saying, "Oh, I'm getting tired of living through historic events." And that's generic and blanket and universal and relatable. But these books, I know I'm just getting into TED Talk mode, but like, you can have this private, intimate experience one-on-one with the book, your heart, your brain, learning about a somewhat more specific experience than a GIF or meme might touch on.
Absolutely.
And then also, learning about history.
Well, yeah, and I think especially because for me it was the age thing that like bridged all gaps, is that it was like, oh, I'm 12, the girl in this book is 12.
Right.
You know, this is so different from my life. This is so different from what, you know, I am currently experiencing. What would it be like if I experienced
exactly
that? And
what is the word? It's not representation, but where you, I don't know.
Mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors.
Yeah.
It's the which is a Rudine Sims Bishop is the academic who coined that.
Yeah.
And good children's literature shows you a mirror to yourself, but also a window to other people and a sliding glass door into a new world and new thoughts
Right.
that you can step through.
But that's also just so key, is like, there's a 10-year-old in this book. Hey, I'm 10. Even just that
Yep.
is huge.
Yep.
And the terrible things that happen in those books, like, not to be, I remember, and this didn't even happen in the breadth of the book. I remember reading my favorite Dear America book was So Far From Home, which was Mary Driscoll, an Irish mill worker.
Lowell Mill Girls.
Whoa.
And she spends the whole book. She comes over on a ship from Ireland. She joins this community in Lowell. She starts working at the factory. She realizes the conditions are bad. They're trying to unionize. The company is going up against the unionists. You know, a general story. What really sort of like turned me on a dime about that book is you get to the end, and the end is sort of heroic, that they've got a union and they're, you know, she's stable. And then you turn the page, the epilogue. Keep in mind, I'm reading this as an 11-year-old. You turn the page and Mary Driscoll dies
Cholera.
that year of cholera.
Yep.
And it sort of sets you up, not in that like things are always bad, but that like life is unpredictable, stories are unpredictable.
Yep.
And I think at the age that those are for, I think it's really important. In the same way that books like outside of this, like books like Bridge to Terabithia, which is also a frequently banned book, are just like hard, like things, life is unpredictable, and you just sort of have to, you can have good moments and bad moments, and life is unpredictable and it will hit you. But like, I remember that hit me so bad when I read it, that she ended the story the hero and then she died, and I was so mad about it. But like, mad in a good way. This is not like the kind of thing where I'm like, yeah, so a child should never be able to read that again because that was hard. I'm like, no, the understanding I got from that book about how life is just like both good and bad at the same time.
Sure.
Or so I remember that vividly because So Far From Home was the first Dear America book I ever read. I got a copy of it from, of all places, the gift shop at the Henry Ford, Greenfield Village.
Makes sense.
Classic move. But the experience that I had, similar one, was with the first Royal Diaries book I ever read, which was Jahanara, who's from Mughal, India. And at the end of this fictionalized diary, her mother dies, which happened in real life. Her mother was Mumtaz Mahal, who is the woman for whom the Taj Mahal was built. That is her mausoleum. And she died giving birth to one of Jahanara's younger sisters. And so the end of this book is her just absolutely, you know, heartbroken because her beloved mother is dead and her brothers are fighting, and because, especially with the ones about the real girls who existed, you know, you see two of her brothers are fighting throughout the book, and you know, you find out that her favorite one is the one who loses the war. You know, in the epilogue it mentions, you know, okay, so the Taj Mahal gets built, of course, but after Shah Jahan dies and his sons are fighting it out, you know, Jahanara loses her favorite brother. And you're just like, dang. And I cried my eyes out over the end of that book too. I was a very weepy child. I'm still a very weepy adult. And again, like, that was all, I don't know. I mean, it was good for me, but I also am just thinking about, it gave me the skills to know, because I knew bad things happen. Life is life.
Right.
But it teaches you how to maybe not be so frightened in the face of.
Sure.
Yeah.
Gives you early experience of processing emotions.
Definitely.
Trying to avoid saying feeling the feelings, but I don't think it should go unsaid that there's worth to that. Yeah. Learning to do that early, or like.
And it also, it taught me, so I in a turn of events that surprised no one, I grew up to be an English major, and I specialized in medieval and early modern literature. And so much of that's basically, I grew up and I started reading, it's not historical fiction, it was just written a long time ago, you know, it's not written now about the past, it was just written in the past. But so much of, especially like medieval stuff, you know, if you read Beowulf or something, so much of that is so different from how we live right now. And simultaneously, you'll read that kind of stuff and you'll get a flash of like, oh, it's just like me, you know? People have always been people, and the past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. And I think that the books I grew up reading were such a great intro to that concept.
Did you have a Holocaust phase?
No, although I think I didn't have a Holocaust phase in part because I got taken to the museum out here very young. I read Night. I read a lot of, I never made it all the way through Diary of Anne Frank. I read a lot of nonfiction about it, but not so much on my own time. It was mostly school sponsored, and my parents talked a lot about it with me. And a part of it was we have a lot of family friends who are Jewish, and so they were like, we're getting you this kind of extra early before we can generally expect it to be, you know, handed to you in school, so that you don't embarrass yourself or cause anyone any pain.
It was just a thing that I had younger family members and friends and stuff that I went through it, and then they went through it, where they hit an age where they read one book about the Holocaust and then they read like 6 other books about Holocaust, because there was something about the Holocaust especially that made you want to try to wrap your head around it.
Sure.
As a child, that you just like could not understand how it happened, so you had to read 5 or 6 books to try to understand. I don't think anybody has a full understanding even now, but I think as a child, the discovery of how that could happen and how people could stop being people in that way, I think was really important. My favorite of those books, I think, was The Devil's Arithmetic, which
was that the one where she's stuck at Seder and it's really long and she ends up going back in time?
Yeah, she ends up going back in time, and then just as she's about to walk in the gas chamber, she gets bolted back to her own time. And so there is that for children, that she does survive it. Yeah. But you know that the mirror person that she was sort of play acting as didn't. Yeah. And so there is sort of the moment at the end where you're like, it's okay, but it's not. Like,
right.
Yeah, and I know that there's a lot of
another frequently challenged book, by the way.
Sure. And there are a lot of, I think, very understandable critiques, which is not the same thing as a challenge or a ban. You know, this is vibrant discussion of the way that the Holocaust gets used in fiction, certainly for adults, to some extent for children today. I think Dara Horn's probably got good essays about it, and people love dead Jews. But yeah, no, it is a strong way. There's a Dear America. Well, see, what I do remember is that there's a Dear America book about a Jewish family who leaves Germany like just in time. And the first half takes place in Germany and the second half takes place in the United States after they come to the US. And they were a very, you know, sort of high class family in Germany. And obviously, like, it's horrible to have to leave your home, but also the struggle of this girl being like, we live completely differently here now. And so that's one that made an impression on me. And the thing that actually made the impression is that before they manage to escape, they're like betrayed basically by her nanny, like who she adored, who was like the cool older sister au pair, like who turns them in. And so that was the thing that made the impression on me of like, oh, okay. I think the closest thing I had to that was my like New York tenement garment worker phase, which covered a number of dimensions. I mean, I remember, and there's multiple Dear America volumes from like Jewish immigrant perspective and then Italian immigrant perspective. And so,
which I need to ask because it's a standalone, but it was the standalone that changed my life. Yeah. Did you ever read Ashes of Roses by Mary Jane Ausch?
No.
Okay. Well, when I was in 7th grade, I remember it like it was yesterday. Like, I was at a book fair in 7th grade looking at the historical fiction, and there was this book. It had a picture of the Ash building, it had a picture of a girl, and then it said Ashes of Roses in pink. And my teacher sort of hovered over my shoulder and said, I'm about to make you do a project on historical fiction if you want to get that one. And I got that one, and it was the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire book. and she has three friends that all, spoilers for a 30-year-old book, but they all end up dying. She survives the factory, but all three of her friends die in different horrifying ways. And at one point, because one of the things about, not that we always end up talking about the Triangle Shirtwaist fire on this podcast, but one of the things that happened during the fire was that your choices were to either burn in the fire or to jump out the windows. And she is at the window with two of her friends holding hands, about to jump, and she chickens out and lets go at the last second, and they fall out in front of her. And that in seventh grade just sort of like changed my trajectory. I don't know why. I probably read that book 12 times when I was in seventh grade. It just really hit me.
I read this book when I was slightly older, but in a similar kind of dynamic at the ending was Codename Verity, which I probably read in 9th or 10th grade, which I think I read the entire back half in one sitting. And I'm not going to spoil the end of Codename Verity, even though it is at least a decade old by this point, because I was thinking about the ending of that book the other day. And that's a World War II like spies kind of deal with some of the most beautiful withholding of information from the reader I've ever seen. I have some other notes about.
Don't you hate that? You love it, but you hate it.
Yeah. Well, because then you have to go back and start reading the book all over again. So I occasionally still will scroll through Libby to see what is still on there, kind of in the vein of, I read a lot of Carolyn Meyer books. She was quite known for historical fiction. Tudor ones. Yep, I read Mary, Bloody Mary, but she had other ones that were set, like she had one about Anne Hathaway, as in Will Shakespeare's Anne Hathaway. She had one about I did have like a Paris ballet school phase, where any book that I could find that was set in like the Opera House Ballet School, this was also circa my Phantom of the Opera phase. But I recently, just the other maybe just last year, read At the Sign of the Sugared Plum, which is part of this. It's set in that one's about the Great Plague in the 17th century in England, and then there's a sequel that's about the Great Fire of London, because it was a bad year in London that year. But it was the kind of book that I really loved as a kid, that was like, it was often kind of like young woman sets out on her own. In this case, it was a girl who's going to live with her sister who runs a confectionery in London. So until the plague hits, most of the book is them making like candied violets and selling them in a way that, like, that is exactly the kind of like imaginary games I played with myself as a kid.
Making candied violets. Yeah, it sounds
about right. In Jacobean England, or no, that's Restoration England. And so it was nice to know that they still make them. And a good friend of mine's been on me to read A Curse Dark as Gold for ages, which has a lot of really good details about the textile trade in England. I'm so stoked to eventually get around to it.
My gosh.
What does interest me as a former history child who is now a child librarian who sort of leans toward history, a thing that's weird to me is that, like, the topics that were big when we were children, there's like, they're not writing it anymore on those topics. And so, like, I remember I read so much about the Civil War. There was a lot of, like, Anne Rinaldi was big.
Yep.
There were a couple other one-offs that were doing a lot of Civil War. Yep. And there's nothing coming out about the Civil War anymore. World War II has taken over, but I don't remember World War II being that big when we were.
No, I remember Molly, and who's an American Girl, and like, honestly, nonfiction about it.
Sure.
I suppose I should have called up Damon for this, because they purchase they purchase all of our juvenile fiction. But I feel like there's a lot less just straightforward, this is a novel set in the past for kids. I mean, certainly further back than, say, the 30s,
I Survived is huge. I love I Survived. Yes. And then there's Girls Survive, which is sort of like, we saw the success of I Survive and we're going to girls it. And Girls Survive, I will say, has some historical events that I have not seen any books written about before for children. So that's delightful to me. They have the Hartford Circus fire, which I was like, You know what? Considering the number of children who unfortunately died in the Hartford Circus fire, it is wild that nobody wrote a book about it yet.
Yeah.
So I'm glad there is one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems to be a different sort of setup than what we had.
Which is fascinating to me.
And I feel so bad. I can get little boys into Alan Gratz, and then there's like not quite another Alan Gratz out there yet.
Yeah.
And there are respectfully, there are women writing historical World War II fiction, but sometimes with boys in that age group, they need it to be a boy, and there aren't that many.
Sure.
Children's publishing, call us.
So, processing emotions, hard emotions, sad emotions, and then the I Survived books, which I haven't read. It wasn't my generation, but I see those covers. Sometimes they're really stark. But I could see the value of also kind of like, not exactly lateral, but a step beyond processing hard emotions is incredibly traumatizing experiences and how to process those should they arise, and they do. I was curious for you guys to share your memories about how you would often locate, find, encounter these books, even perhaps maybe early on before you became mega fans.
Well, that was the joy of the series, is that there was a list in the back of the book of the other books in the series.
Yes.
And so you just treated it like a checklist.
My whole thing, if I can just ramble here, is so the whole thing of read a book where you can put yourself in someone else's shoes. The kind of the ultimate one for that is Diary of a Little Girl.
Or boy. There is actually another series called My Name is America that did boys. It was just never, it didn't have as many books, and I don't think it ever hit the popularity. But not to interrupt you, I just remember that one of my favorite things that happened in those two series was there is a Vietnam era duology in which there's a Dear America book about the girl who is trying to fight for peace and activism in the United States, and the brother that gets sent to Vietnam. And it was very cool to see both sides of that from the same family. Sure. Anyway, go on.
Oh yeah, no, I fumbled the title, but I was referring to just Anne Frank's diary.
Oh yes, Diary of a Young Girl.
And I haven't done the research yet, but I could see the thread from that to American Girl.
Yeah,
and that's a book that never dies. That's a book that I think there's been more than one graphic novelization at this point.
There's the play.
It rings so true to humankind and like the ability to hope even in dark times that I don't think that book will ever not be published. Now, what about that is threatening to people that continue banning books? I'm not sure.
Well, and this is my soapbox again, is I think I was allowed. I think my English teacher in school finally presented that to a class I was in when I was in 9th grade, because maybe they thought you have to be at least that old to process that. But empathy is really the big word when it comes to Banned Books Week.
Yeah.
And I think the whole thing of it is perceived as dangerous to some who make these challenges whenever anyone is like proposing, how would you feel if you were in these experiences?
Well, and that's because, I agree that there's a lot of universal appeal to Diary of a Young Girl. A layer of nuance to that is that it all happened before they were betrayed and before Anne Frank died of typhus in a camp. And so I think about something like Mouse, which is about generational trauma, is because I'm pretty sure Art Spiegelman's parents were survivors. And there is nothing noble about it. There is nothing, it is just horribly distressing. And I think that that's, part of the reason that people challenge that book is that there is no way to make that about the triumph of the human spirit or something. It was just horrible that it happened. And looping back to watching Chernobyl, which I promise is relevant, something, one of the lines that Jared Harris has as the protagonist of that series is every time you tell a lie, you incur a debt to the truth. Wow. And I think a lot of times where a lot of this book banning is coming from is also like, we don't want to admit that's true. We're in a crisis of truth telling right now. So I, run a book club here, and we just read Drama by Raina Telgemeier, which is like a decade old. And I, even more than, it's from like 2012. And I had to explain to my little 4th and 5th grade book kids that when I was their age, this book, I mean, first of all, it is one of the most challenged books of the decade, but also like it would have been considered inappropriate when I was their age because it like there's hand holding in it, because there's boys what if they hold hands? No. And watching their faces be like, what, because we were also having a discussion about, because I asked them, I was like, what do you think is quote unquote inappropriate, content for your own age? Like, I want to hear what you all think. Sure. And, they gave me some answers, and I was like, what do you think is the absolute worst thing that would happen if you read a book that you weren't comfortable with? And, or even just that somebody, not even necessarily you, but just somebody read a book they weren't comfortable with. And they were basically, they kind of couldn't come up with anything other than basically like, well, you might not like it, and then you'd put it down.
Sure.
And I was like, okay. And I understand if you might want to avoid the experience of reading something that you don't like. That is A-okay. People, trust me, that's how adults go about their reading lives. But even they understand that it's not dangerous.
Right.
And especially explaining to them, like pointing out that, again, when I was their age, we didn't have marriage equality. And one of them was like, oh my gosh, right. That's why my mom's had to get married in a different state.
Right.
And it's, they to an extent they know, but they also don't, because we've made a lot of progress, which is great. But occasionally having to be like, hey guys, this is why it's important. Yeah,
empathy more informs opinion.
And I think the most terrible thing about the book banning when it comes to especially LGBT children's books is that most of it is the perception that if my child sees a gay character living their lives in a book, they'll think that they can do that in real life.
Yeah.
And that is a legitimate fear for some people, that they want to control, like, even like the gay couple doesn't have to be the main part of the book. Nope. Some of these books get banned because in the background you see two men holding hands. Yeah. The book is about two straight people or a child that has nothing to do with it.
Or a penguin.
Like, books like Harriet Gets Carried Away.
I love Harriet Gets Carried Away.
Which is a book about a little girl that like dresses up as a penguin and goes on an adventure.
With penguins to Antarctica, and she has to get back in time for her birthday. I do this one at story time all the time, and she has two dads.
One of the pages shows that she has two dads. I don't think it's even addressed in the text that she has two dads, but you can, instead of having a mom and a dad, she has two dads. And that book is consistently banned, even though the story itself has literally nothing to do with the fact she has two dads.
And the number of people, God bless the good people of Ferndale, who come up to me and say, hello, this is Harriet Gets Carried Away. I love this book because it's got a black little girl protagonist and her two dads, and it is about penguins and Antarctica. Do you have other books that are like this?
More of this, please.
More of this, please.
Yep. So that's,
because
one could look at that and say, oh, how refreshing. We do not have enough of this.
And also one could look at that and say, if you're a kid, you might say, oh, that's like what my family looks like, or that's what my friend's family looks like, or,
or have a eureka moment where you're like, it's a possibility to have a relationship with two boys or two girls and not just the way my parents have it.
Yeah. Right. And we often talk about on this podcast about, banned books week, or do we sort of pivot to freedom to read? And I love me some freedom to read, but this year especially, I'm feeling the band part, and Becca's wearing a fantastic "I'm with the band" shirt.
Yeah,
for sale by the Friends of the Royal Oak Public Library.
Wahoo!
Love
Everybody,
it.
come pick your shirts up.
Bravo.
And I really am this year, feeling the, not necessarily the, oh, did you know they banned Fahrenheit 451? Well, of course they did. But, go read Genderqueer this year. Go read All Boys Aren't Blue. And I don't know, like just.
And I think another thing is you see this banned books list, and some people are afraid to like read the banned books list because they assume it's going to be threatening. And Genderqueer is one of those books. It's in the adult section. It's about a young adult going through like it's coming of age. And I remember, because of how high it is on the banned books list, I was like, there is going to be like sex on page in this book based on the way people are treating it. And at best, it's like the idea of sex. It's like the idea of being like, what sort of genders am I attracted to? And I'm reading and I'm like, this is the big threatening book they're all scared of. Mm-hmm. They know they can put it down, right? If it's not for them, they don't have to read it. I don't understand why reading this would, if you are LGBT, if you are queer, if you are questioning gender, if you are seeing that, the book's not going to, the book might make you feel more welcome, but it's not a pass or fail. It's not by reading Genderqueer, you will suddenly start questioning your gender identity. It's just, if you were questioning your gender identity, reading Genderqueer will make you feel, what was it? What's the order of the words? Windows, doors?
Oh, yeah, windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors.
Mirrors, yeah.
Sorry, the number of times I cited that paper in graduate school, it was many times. Yeah, and also, I'm also the person that's like, and even if reading Genderqueer was a one-way ticket to thinking more deeply about your gender, I still think that we should hand out free copies of it on street corners, because I think thinking about your gender is a great thing to be, and a great thing to do. I mean, I even think about something like Patience and Esther, which is a graphic novel that does have sex on page. You're welcome, everybody. And I'm the kind of person that's like, yeah, and it's a graphic novel that gets shelved in the adult section.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And in the famous words of Tom Lehrer, may his memory be a blessing. I do have a cause. It is obscenity. I'm for it. Everyone go listen to his song Smut for this fine banned books week.
For sure. I mean, anyone out there, there's even just, frankly, the subversive curiosity factor of it. Like, come find out why. You know, you've heard these books are banned. Find out for yourself.
Come be curious.
Find out why people are threatened about the book about gay penguins, a thing that penguins can't control because they don't have higher thought.
Or opposable thumbs.
Are you arguing with the penguins who just on their own were gay? It's a thing that we end up in these circles because we all know what we think about banned books, that we're just like, I don't understand how people have an argument against this, and yet here we are.
Yeah. And I think this is where my good old boy do I love the First Amendment kicks back in, because I'm like, you know what, actually, we don't have to agree on this, but I've got that sweet, sweet freedom of speech, which covers quite a lot.
Right.
And also, covers my public library collection development rights. So you don't have to check the book about gay penguins out, but boy, oh boy, am I buying the book about gay penguins.
And fun fact about librarians, in general, we fight for the First Amendment, period.
Yeah.
We will fight in either direction if we have to.
Yes.
A lot of times they'll be like, well, I bet you don't have books on President Trump because you don't agree with him. I'm like, no, we do, because our community wants books on President Trump, and therefore we buy books on President Trump.
Yeah.
That is what collection is. That is, we need to support the community. And as much as you don't want to see books about gay people in the community, parts of the community do, and so those books must also be there.
Yeah,
sure.
And there's definitely things that we have that I'm like,
right.
And sometimes that stuff is quote unquote neutral. Like when it comes to like, we got a lot of like, witchy, occulty type stuff.
Sure.
Not my cup of tea.
Sure.
I just don't go to that section. Sure. It's the magical power of not going to the section you're not interested in.
Yeah.
And it's free.
Right.
All of this costs you $0 US.
Yeah.
Which is great because everything's expensive these days.
Oh, yeah.
So it's incredible how free minding your own business is.
Public libraries.
Public libraries.
The public.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I think we could have another episode on this. Let's do it again soon.
Oh, 100%. Can we do book
I love that the final thought was mind your business.
Yes. Yeah. Well, can the final thought be book recommendation?
Yeah, please. What do we have?
Have you read any good historical fiction recently, Becca?
I have been on a contemporary romance kick, but I will say one that goes up pretty consistently. I'm the YA librarian, so unfortunately my middle grade options are a little slim. But Rudicepetus, Salt to the Sea is another one of those books that will hurt your feelings, but in a way that you feel is justified.
Anything Rudicepetus writes, worth the time.
She's one of the best ones for YA. And it is kind of cool. The kids really want World War II, and it's kind of hard to pivot them sometimes where you're like, well, this is about I can't remember what is the name of the yellow cover book by her. But I'm just like, it's about a different war. I think you'd still like it. And they're like, no, I won't World War II.
Yeah. I've had some success pivoting that with Ruta Cepetus, like to the one that's set in communist Romania, I Must Betray You. I've had a couple of boys who are like, I loved the war that saved my life. And I'm like, all right, I think you're ready for something like this. And they're like, I'll allow it. So that's pretty great. On the YA side, my recommendation is When the Angels Left the Old Country by Sasha Lamb, who we have had on the podcast to talk about that precise book. It is one of the finest works of historical fiction I've read in ages, and definitely scratched the itch in the part of my brain that has never tired of Jewish immigrant stories. It's a love letter to the Yiddish novel. And I am also at present reading The Egyptian by Mika Valtteri. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure I said that right. I'll hear from my partner if I haven't, because it's a Finnish name. And it's a book translated from Finnish that is both about meticulously researched ancient Egypt, but also Finnish post-World War II angst.
Okay.
So, but it's delightful.
And I will say, it's an adult, not a youth book.
That is very much an adult book.
But I haven't finished yet, because sometimes you get distracted in the middle of a book. But Mutual Interest is a book about lavender marriage during the Gilded Age.
Beautiful.
And that, it all kind of comes around to that. I've been watching the Gilded Age, and so that all sort of locks in. Just seeing that. It's hard to watch the Gilded Age, though, because you're like, yes, how sad for you, your inherent wealth.
Yes, no, I can't watch The Gilded Age, even though I adore Danae Benton, because I know that I would be like, why has no one firebombed this robber baron yet? Why hasn't it happened? And I don't even believe in political violence in reality, but on a Julian Fellows show, I don't know. I was always rooting for that Irish chauffeur on Downton Abbey.
Same. I'm like, this is
literally Sybil died and I stopped watching.
Any other recommendations to share? Because I'll just share that I am about to start reading a book.
What book?
By a one Catherine Patterson about a bridge.
Oh God, have you read it before?
I have not read Bridge to Terabithia.
I'm not going to spoil it. Just no, you'll be in your feelings.
But it's worth noting that the people, and it did kind of come up on this podcast, that these books that supposedly are dangerous, these books that made the ones who read them cry, stay with them in their heart as one of their favorite books ever, all time.
Watson's Go to Birmingham still has me in a chokehold. So,
yeah.
Yep.
So, yes, we're gonna feel our feelings. We're gonna mind our own business,
and we're gonna read what we want to read.
We're gonna support public libraries, and thank you guys.
Don't make your public library challenge books, please. Just leave them on the shelf and leave them for somebody else.
Has been a treasure. I want to, because you guys just did an amazing episode here, and we're going to do another one again soon, because I know you really just wanted to talk about American Girl books and historical fiction. We did thread in a lot of substantive conversations around banned books, so I think we should do... If you ever want to return to the topics of historical fiction, if you still had more to share, you can come back to the podcast.
100%.
Anytime.
Okay.
Becca.
We'll see you guys next time. Visit your local library.
All right, everybody. It's a little too quiet. It's the Ferndale Library Podcast. It's brought to you by the Friends of the Ferndale Library. Remember to go to ferndalefriends.org if you want to learn more about supporting this podcast and become a friend of the Ferndale Library. And also come in literally right now, because it's Banned Books Week, and go to Royal Oak as well, because they're awesome as well. Thanks, Becca. Thanks, everybody.
Next time.
Merry Ground.